to Sally the Zombie Cheerleader, and you're watching Bad JuJu and J-Bone as they present Everything Edgar.
Hello, I'm Bad JuJu.
And I'm J-Bone.
And this is Bad JuJu
And J-Bone
presents the Little Gothic Horror Show
from the Pacific Northwest.
We're bringing you stories and their storytellers.
Films, mini-movies,
Books, poetry,
interviews with wonderful guests,
musicians galore, creatives coming out the...
out of the woodwork of the coffin that they're made from.
Yes.
Pacific Northwest ones.
Yes, and tonight, Please, we've got the best show ever.
Everything Edgar.
Edgar Allan Poe.
We have potato chips. We have...
Hopefully we don't make so much noise that the police come knocking at our door.
Right? Potentially dangerous.
Instead of bringing you Silent as the Grave film, we have decided to share with you Ayal Rozen's Annabelle Lee, starring Campbell Harmon. So hold on tight. We're going on an incredible ride into the mind, the life, and the genres that Edgar Allan Poe started.
It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know, by the name of Annabelle Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love. I and my... with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. A wind blew out of the cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabelle Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels not half so happy in heaven went envying her and me. Yes, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee. and the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the nighttide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride. In her sepulchre, there by the sea. In her tomb, by the sounding sea.
Amateurs. What's up next is Titles, Top, and Tipples with your hostess with the mostest, Jude Madeline Hall. She is going to be chatting with an author, poet, A A Rubin, as well as the maniacal minds behind Poe movies, Season and Thad Ciechanowski, and also 6 Degrees of Poe, created by Carmen Bouldin and Jeannie Smith. Sit back and enjoy. We are.
Hi, my name is Jude Madeline Hall, and this is Titles, Talk, and Tipples. With me tonight are some very awesome Gothic people. We are all celebrating Edgar Allan Poe's 215th birthday this year. And so though it happened on January 19th, we're still celebrating because a bunch of us celebrate Poe all year round. With me is A A Rubin. He is an author and poet. And we've got Carmen and Jeannie from 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe. It's a podcast, or should I say a poecast. Yes. And we have Thad and Season from Poe Movies. And you guys actually make movies from Poe's stories. So let's raise a glass. I didn't have a martini glass, but I did follow 6 Degrees of Poe's recipe for a, what is it called? Manhattan.
The Manhattan in the crowd. Yes.
Manhattan in the crowd. What are you guys drinking?
Water. We're both sober.
Liquid ice.
Yeah. Liquid ice, okay.
Health reasons we both have to be sober.
I got some 21-year-old single malt scotch.
Okay.
Oh,
Nice.
This is called the Eye of the Skull from the Gold Bug.
I'm just
Yes.
drinking caffeine, so I
You're
can't.
just drinking caffeine. We'll raise our glass to Edgar Allan Poe. Hic tandem felici condintur reliquiae.
Salud.
Cheers.
Salud.
Oh.
Yes.
All right, so A A Rubin, let's start with you. You are published in those lovely books behind you, Love Letters to Poe. You and I actually share that we're both published in volume 1. Are you
Yes.
published in more than that?
Yes, I'm in volume 1, volume 2, and the upcoming volume 3. I have a poem in each one of them.
A poem,
Uh,
nice. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. And then you see next to it, I also have my own collection of Gothic poetry. You know, as a writer of Gothic poetry, it's a limited market.
Yeah.
Joey said you can put it out yourself, but everybody, rhyming poetry, metered poetry, it's harder to sell these days. Everybody wants free verse, these types of things, and I saw, I happened to stumble across Sarah's call, and it had actually, at that point, I think the call had just said for short fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and I had written this really, really gothic thing, and I contacted her through, whatever email or whatever that was on there, and I said, would you consider poetry?
Yeah.
And she did, so I submitted it, and that really, brought me into this whole community here.
How long have you guys been making Poe movies?
Well, the first one we made was in 2011,
Okay.
Pascal Amontillado. So we were able to connect with a couple different educational distributors, and they liked it, so they took it. I've always kind of thought Poe was pretty cool. I liked that story, the Casca Amontillado. I always thought it was a pretty trippy story.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really, I think in making that film, I kind of became a Poe fan. We started reaching out to the museums. We got connected with them. Casca Amontillado won an Emmy, so we got some grant money to make The Raven. The Raven did well, also did well. That one won an Emmy, and then so
You had 2 nominations too.
yeah, it had a couple other nominations, and then we made Telltale Heart just recently, and my wife, being the English and literature nerd that she is, kind of was right there with me.
Well,
I was
also,
just
it's
about
like,
to ask Susan. Yeah, how did you?
yeah,
get
I mean, like
involved?
after he made that, I was like, when I used to teach, we never had anything good to teach with. I love Roger Corman, but you can't use his movies in the class. Like,
Right.
you just can't. Like, there was never an adaptation where it was like, hey, we're going to read this and now we're going to watch this.
Oh, right,
There was
because it
nothing
didn't
like
line
that.
up. Yeah.
Nothing did, because everything, and I mean, we try to make them short because the stories are short. So what we do now is like make the films, but we also have all the other things that we do that we tie in so that we can give teachers and Poe lovers, kind of have to have our feet in both worlds. We want to make Poe fans happy because we're Poe fans. So we figure if we make ourselves happy, we'll make everyone else happy.
Absolutely, yeah.
For me, it's been like really fun because I get to write scripts and I get to figure out like how to teach stuff, and our kids are involved with it, and they're excited about it too. And I mean, that's it. And like we're working on our next film, and it's
Can you share what your next film is?
it's the Black
Well,
Cat,
yeah, we
hopefully.
have several, we
Oh,
have several.
okay. Yeah.
More Black Cat is the one we would like to make next.
So how about 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe? How did your show come about?
Carmen and I met because we were, she was my assistant principal when I was a teacher. So that's kind of how that started. So I was good at being told what to do by her because she was my boss at work, So I was like, yeah, okay. So now you're going to help me with the podcast. I'm like, all right, there we go. Yeah.
Both of us liked Poe from a very young age. We started talking about like what poems or stories we first got hooked in. And it's like, hey, Poe's more than just horror. He's more than poetry. He's science or science fiction, surrealism, all these things, all of the degrees that we revolve around within that 6 degrees. And so we kind of just came up with the name of the 6 degrees of Edgar Allan Poe, because when you start looking at his influences on so many things, you don't even realize there are things out there that we find, and it's like, wow, Poe had an influence on that. So we kind of took the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and kind of morphed that into the 6 degrees of Edgar Allan Poe. And then when you bring Kevin Bacon in, you have his show, The Following, that had that cult serial killer that was obsessed with Poe. He was an English professor. So it all ties in together.
Don't go into the dark alone. We'll be right back. This film you are about to see is based on a story told 181 years ago by the master of drama and suspense, Edgar Allan Poe.
This story was told through the eyes of a madman who, like all of us, believed he was sane.
True, I'm nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. But why will you say that I'm mad? See how calmly, how precisely I can tell the story to you. Listen. It starts with the old man. An old man in an old house. A good man, I suppose. He had never harmed me. I didn't want his gold, if gold there was. Then what was it? I think it was his eye. Yes, that eye, the eye, that. His eye staring. Milky white film. The eye, everywhere, everywhere, in everything. Of course, I had to get rid of the eye. So I waited, watched, waited. I was never so kind to the old man. I looked after him each minute, each second, and I waited. But night after night, in the hour of the slowest clock, I opened the old man's door. The eye was always closed. For 7 days I waited. You think me mad? What madman would wait, could wait so patiently, so long, in the old house, with the old man and the eye that... Then on the 8th night, I knew. Tonight. Still, I waited, while time slowed, stopped, ebbed out. A watch's hand moved more quickly than mine. Then... What? No! For an hour, I did not move a muscle. I could feel the earth turn. The eye. Hear the spider spinning. In the house, the grinding crumble of decay. Then, something else. Dull and muffled, yet... Of course. It was the beating of the old man's heart. He knew.
And we're back. And we're going to start delving into some deeper aspects of Poe's writing. Let's talk about some of the myths surrounding him and get the truth out there.
We like to discuss how he would introduce some religion into some of his stories. So we would discuss did he have a religious background, which, you know, with all of us, and especially that time period, me growing up in the South, we all had some temple of some religion into our families. But we always think that Poe always likes to bring in the ideas, but then he never really solidifies whether he's truly religious or if he's just a follower of that particular concept.
And he
So
also
we
did
just discussed.
satire and,
Yes.
you know,
Well,
comedy. And I think sometimes people don't get that. That
Oh,
sometimes he was being
absolutely.
Very true.
satirical, you know.
he clearly understood those religious motifs.
Mhm.
But you know, there's nothing that he wrote that was like super. I don't, as far as I know, he wasn't very into organized religion or had much of a concern for it. But he was very educated on it, and he certainly understood. Even though he's born in Boston, he was really raised by probably more Francis Allen than John Allen, because he was probably
And he lived in the United
Thank you,
Kingdom for a
girls.
while
Yeah,
and
but-
went
yeah.
to school there. Yeah.
Poe was a huge champion of the short story. He
Mhm.
he loved that you could you had the reader for the entire thing. So it's
Yeah.
like Aristotle's concept of the unity of action and things like that. It exists in a poem and it exists in a short story because you're going to read it beginning to end, as opposed to a novel, which you're going to read some of it, you're going to put down and the spell is broken and you have to move on. So
Mhm.
I was thinking about that because also, in addition to having short movie, in addition to being a teacher and being able to show it in one class period, which is another thing that you can't do for an hour and a half movies,
Right.
when he was writing about short stories and his criticism, one of the authors that he really liked and that was influential on him was Nathaniel Hawthorne. He was involved. His criticism was one of the things that that helped bring, you know, Hawthorne to real, you know, prominence. It was one of the things that really started bringing the short story genre to life. I always think of Poe kind of in the, and I've seen him classified here sort of in the romantic tradition, the capital R romantic tradition, not
Yeah.
like that there are romantic elements where he's writing about various loves in a romantic love kind of way, but in the capital R romantic, he has a lot in common with some of the British romantics. Like when I read his poetry, it's similar to some of Coleridge's stuff or
Mhm.
Byron or Blake or these types of things. I mean, they weren't gothic like Poe, but it
Mhm.
was some of their stuff starts to trend in that darker direction as well.
Poe was more than just short stories and poetry. He wrote essays on, he philosophized.
Majority of his stories were not horror either, which a lot of
Oh
people
yeah.
I think there's like 12 horror stories, and the rest are mostly comedies, science fiction.
Detective.
Detective, there's a lot of
Yes.
detective.
Very
Yes.
much so.
Yeah.
That's something I always tell kids that whenever because I've had to speak at schools a few times, and something I'll say is like, you know, have you ever seen an episode of Scooby-Doo? Well, that story structure is what Poe invented. If you read The Gold Bug, you know, that's what
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo is, right? You know, so like it's like kind of he invented that. Any cop show on TV, anything like
Mhm.
that, they all sort of follow a similar structural pattern.
Agatha
Poe called it
Christie. I mean,
Poe called
British
it
shows,
ratio.
the murder mystery, right?
Poe called it ratiocination.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that was the sort of the Sherlock Holmes stereotype, which was derived from C. Auguste Dupin from Murders in the Rue Morgue.
It's actually he references it. Conan Doyle references it, and
Yeah.
he has a number of
Yes.
times. First he
gives him full
dismisses.
credit.
First he
Full credit.
yeah, he dismisses him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, just a trick." But then he does the exact same thing to
Right.
Watson in the same
Yes.
story, and he actually admits later on that he did.
That's the one thing I wish Poe would have written more of was more of the detective fiction, because I think he could have turned out some fantastic pieces.
So I heard, Carmen, I heard you say 3 detective stories. So I take it you don't consider The Gold Bug to be a detective story.
I do, but I kind of categorize it more of an adventure story. But yes, there's definitely that detective fiction element in it.
So it has the theme. It has the theme
Yes.
of a detective story, but
Yeah.
not like where he has an actual Auguste Dupin putting
Yeah.
to, you know, the detecting and all that. But the one things that we have come across that we want, you know, a lot of people that don't know is that Edgar Allan Poe is known as the father of the detective story.
Mhm.
because he was the one that first kind of introduced that whole thing. But the other thing is his second one, which was the murder of Marie Roget, was the closest thing to the first true crime story, because he kind of used what was going on with the murder of Mary Rogers, and he put it in the newspaper. He talked about it, trying to solve it himself. So, I mean, we are all armchair detectives. What was it?
Yeah.
We're all
Oh,
we're
armchair
all
detectives.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're, lawn chair, you name it, kitchen
Lawn
sink.
chair.
We'll look at all of it. But yeah, Poe does not have that moniker as much as he has of the poet, and he has of the horror and the goth. But he does need to have that acknowledgement, in my opinion.
And there's Poe influence in every genre I think that we can think of, except possibly hip hop. But I'm sure,
Oh,
no, I'm sure
even
we could
so,
find
he
a
is
sixth
so
degree, right, that
he is
connects him
Yeah.
to hip
he's
hop.
so
Oh,
his
yeah.
poetry is so, and he one of the things he's really good at is meter. And
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
if you're gonna talk about, I mean, hip hop relies a lot on meter. It's a
Oh
different
yeah.
meter than the meter that Poe was writing in, but the concept of writing metered poetry. It's
Yeah. And that's
I think
something that I love about Poe, the rhythm of his writing. Like
Mhm.
we've been delving a little more into reading his poetry aloud on the show, and it's just very interesting the way it's written out, and then figuring out how the sentences come together, because of course, because it's a poem, it'll stop in the middle of a sentence and go on to the next line, and just figuring all that out and figuring out the rhythm to read it in that makes sense, so it's not choppy, and you're not ending the thought at the end of a line, it's continuing, or maybe not.
That was one of the things that Poe is so well versed at, is putting his emphasis on what he needs to say and when he needs to say it. He always leaves it open to the reader's interpretation. He always gives you more than one side of the story, even
Mhm.
with the what do they call the narrator, the unreliable narrator, that type of thing. And it gives you open season on whether we want, not for you season, but I'm just saying open season on how you want to interpret it, how you think about it, how you feel about it. And I think that goes also with his poetry. He was very much a world round type of writer.
Very much.
He would
I
give
think he
you what you want.
understood. Yeah, I think he really understood the human condition. We're here with Poe Movies, 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe podcast, and A A Rubin, author and poet. We'll be right back after this.
Then something else. Dull and muffled, yet. Of course. It was the beating of the old man's heart. He knew. So strong for such an old man. Louder then. And still louder. For all the world to hear and know. I had to stop it. Then it was over. The heart was still. The eye was dead. I was free. But there was still work to be done. replaced the planks so cleverly. No eye, not even his, could have found anything wrong. Huh? So soon?
The neighbors reported a scream. We're obliged to investigate.
A scream? My own, gentleman. A childish dream. But come in, please. You'll want to look through the house.
That is our duty. Where is the old man?
Gone to the city.
You're up very early this morning.
The dream I spoke of, it awakened me.
When did he leave?
The old man? Yesterday.
How long will he be away?
2 weeks. Perhaps longer.
Nothing out of place here.
There is his bed, here his cupboard, all in order.
Quite in order.
All quite in order.
Yes, nothing amiss. You understand that when a complaint is made, we have no choice but...
Stay, please. Such a wretched hour. I was making tea. A hot drink will break the chill. Surely it would surprise good people how much evil the night conceals from their eyes. But not yours, to be sure. What did you say, sir? Yes, of course, the hot water. It will do no harm to the bare boards. I'm a little less tidy with the old man away. Then I heard it. It might have been a hand, a clock. But no. Louder. And still louder. They must hear it. Yet they sit and talk and talk. They must. Of course they do. They know. They do. They're torturing me, watching me, letting it beat so that I... Stop it! Stop it, you devils! Yes, I did it. It's there, under the floor. Oh, stop it! It is the beating of his hideous heart! True, I'm nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. But why will you say that I'm mad?
All right, so we're back with Jeannie, Ari, Carmen, Thad, and Season. We're talking about Edgar Allan Poe, and we're going to jump into the pop quiz. So, all right, so question number 1, name one of the women Edgar wrote about. Season.
Kind of debatable who Annabelle Lee is about, right? So
Okay.
it could be multiple women. It could have been Virginia because she was in the cottage and she was dying, and it came out, I think it came out after she died, and a lot of people were like, but then a lot of women claimed it was about them.
Carmen and Jeannie, do you know what Edgar Allan Poe's favorite drink was?
Oh, Carmen, wasn't it an old fashioned?
No.
Ari, do you know?
I don't know exactly what it was. I know what Robert Louis Stevenson's was. I
Season
feel
Thad,
like
do you know?
I have no idea.
Supposedly,
I think it was alcohol.
eggnog and
what?
brandy.
Yeah.
And does anyone know what his favorite song was? It was a hymn.
Now, if
Thinking.
you hum it, I could
Oh,
probably
I've
figure
only
it out.
listened to it a couple times. I can't even hum it.
Well,
And I'm
then you
a
might as well
musician.
tell us what it is, because I forgot. So.
Does anybody know?
No.
Anybody?
Oh, damn it. And what's really funny is that's the one thing I didn't write down the answer to.
Oh.
So
We can look it up.
I'm gonna.
Hold on.
I
I'm
read
like one
it
of my
and-
kids in my classroom. I'll look it
thought
up for you. Hold
I thought I would remember it off the top of my head, but I'm just gonna look it up really fast.
Come rest in this bosom, I think is
Come
what
rest
it's
in this
called.
bosom.
That's it.
That was his
Yes.
favorite
Yes.
song. Who was the Poe toaster?
Jeff Jerome.
No one knows.
no one knows.
Nobody
it's a
knows. Yeah.
mystery.
Okay.
Yeah, no one knows.
Yeah.
We know what his favorite drink
Ding,
was,
ding,
right?
ding.
We know what he used to leave.
Cognac.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, so that's where my mind went for that question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I assumed that
Yeah,
cognac was Poe's
yeah,
favorite because the Poe
because like
toaster.
there must have been a reason, right? But
For
it's not.
75 years, some mysterious person visited Poe's
Yeah.
grave on Poe's birthday and would drink some cognac and leave the bottle, and nobody ever knew who they
Leave the
were.
bottle, leave the three roses.
Yes.
Yep. Oh yes, and it was arranged in a special
Arranged, yeah.
Yeah.
way.
I like to romantically think that it's Poe and he's time traveled and it's
There you
him.
go. That's a lovely idea.
Yes.
Okay. What was Poe's mother's name, Jeannie?
What was her name?
Yeah.
You put me on the
His
spot
birth
there with the name.
mother.
Hold on. Oh, it's not the adopted mother.
Right, not the adopted. What is the birth mother's
Hold on.
name? Okay. I'm not gonna say anything.
She knows it. She knows it.
I do. I just, for some reason, it just went right out my head. I know
Now
it's
you know
not
how
Virginia.
your
I know it's
students felt. They knew the
yeah,
answer.
I know. This is
too,
why I
but-
tortured them every week this way. I'm just saying. It wasn't. Was it Irma? No.
No.
Alma? No.
You're on the right path though.
Yeah. See, it's just like what Elvira. I know it's not Elvira.
You're closer there.
All right, Carmen, help me out. You're 6
Eliza.
degrees here. Eliza.
We gave a toast at the beginning of the show, or I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it was Hic tandem felici condentur reliquiae. Does anyone know what that translates as? It was in his epitaph. Are you? Oh, don't look it up.
I'm not.
That's cheating.
Let's search it out.
I'm using my resources. It's like,
Yeah.
Well, we can.
I know.
read on this, but
I know. I'm not looking it up. Someone texted me. Sorry.
oh, okay.
It's Carmen. No,
It's just coincidence.
No, it's
no,
not me.
yeah, it was just coincidence. It wasn't her.
It's
Anybody? Come on.
it's kind of sad actually. It says here at last he is happy.
Yeah.
So I thought
Well, that's
that was
Poe.
interesting because it's not just here he is happy, it's here at last he is happy, which suggests he was never happy. I don't know if that were true. I think he was happy. He wrote comedy and satire, so there's a part of me that thinks Poe was happy sometimes.
But one of the things like Terry Pratchett wrote, they said about Terry Pratchett, who was a big, satirist and comic fantasy writer, is people didn't realize how angry he was about the things he was satirizing.
Oh yeah.
It's like they asked Neil Gaiman because they wrote Good Omens together, and they're like, "Oh, Terry
he was
Pratchett must be
pissed.
this really, great, happy-go-lucky guy writing all this funny stuff." And he's like, "No, you don't
Oh,
realize
no.
he is angry, and
You're
this is the
very-
way he deals with his anger over all the injustice and whatever that he sees in the world." So,
Oh yeah. You are going to a desert island and you can only take 3 poems or stories of Poe's with you. And actually, since we've already been chatting for like 2 hours, I'm gonna just have you do one. So I'm gonna take The Pit and the Pendulum.
Mine would be El Dorado.
my favorite is The Bells.
I probably the Purloined Letter.
Because Morella's my favorite.
Take the Black Cat.
Season, where did Edgar's middle name come from? His foster father, and actually when he would spell it out, Edgar A. Poe. So the whole Allan thing came from Griswold, actually, because he didn't once he really parted with John Allan, he didn't really spell it out. So. All right, let's see. Ari, what street was Edgar born on?
I walked down it, but don't remember the name of it. I know that. Go ahead.
Is it Carver, West Carver, maybe?
Yeah, Carver, yeah. If there's any myths about Edgar Allan Poe that you would like to blow up, that Edgar Allan Poe did in fact write The Raven. And we've talked about that Edgar Allan Poe was not an addict. Susan and Thad, you both brought that up. Anything else that you would like to share with the audience that the audience might think about Edgar Allan Poe, but is not true? He was a man of science. Okay. He was very interested in science, and he did not suffer fools and quackery, would be the word. He did not. I mean, he busted up the whole Maisels chess player thing. I mean, there was a whole thing going on at one point where he showed that it was a fake.
He described the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Rica.
Okay.
Yep.
Um,
Mhm.
he was also very good at ciphers and codes.
Yes.
And he was said to, there were only 2 ciphers that he could not solve,
Oh wow.
and they were solved. One was in the
90s.
90s, and one was recently, and they were both solved by computers. Oh, he
Just
also
let Poe
swam.
be.
He swam 6 miles up the James River upstream when he was 15 years.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a really good. Yeah, because what wasn't he a
Yeah.
swimmer in college and
Yeah, and he could box too.
Yeah,
yeah,
he could
he was a
box, yeah.
boxer. So
Why don't you tell us why you think people should read Edgar Allan Poe, Poe's works?
Why I think they should read Edgar Allan Poe? Because it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's
Well, no,
that's
because
like my
because
first answer.
I
Because
think
he's
I think that
awesome.
there's a couple of things. I think that that a lot of times when we go back to the beginnings of things, right? We read people because they're important, right? Or we teach people because they're important, because they did things, and those are important things to have, right? There is a chain of influence we were talking about before, and there were things like that, and he started so many things, but a lot of times, right, they don't hold up in the same way that Poe holds up. There's a timeless quality to it. So he has both of those things, right? He's a really important writer in that he started a lot of these genres.
Horror, literature, poetry, science fiction, surrealism. I mean, all of these different things and criticisms. And there's so many layers within him and what he gave us in such a short time period that he's very profound. I always say he's kind of like the Da Vinci of the mid 1800s, because he left us a legacy that we can continue. And I truly believe that people will be reading Poe, talking about Poe way after we're gone.
Take it away. 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe. How can people find out more?
Well, we have our website, and it's 6degreesofpoe.com, and it's the number 6 or just the actual 6 or spelling it out.
we have our YouTube channel, which is called Poe Unplugged.
A A Rubin. Ari Rubin, where can people find out more about what you do?
Yes, and website just www.aarubin.com.
And Thad and Season, Poe Movies. How can people find out more about you guys and what you're doing?
The most important one that we're on is YouTube. That's where our primary focus is.
So I'm the best content.
So we
All right.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so
for
much for
having
joining
us.
me.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, good night.
Hello. My name is Campbell Harmon, but audiences know me better as the master of the macabre, Edgar Allan Poe. Since 2009, I have appeared in this posthumous form for organizations such as the National Endowment for the Arts, schools, historic societies, museums, and theaters to spark a love of reading in young and old alike. If you would like to learn more about my presentations, go to rottenartist.com. And remember, you are watching Bad JuJu and J-Bone presents.
Disease had only sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. But how can you say that I am mad?
short story I wrote is inspired by Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. It's titled A Harsh Tumble into Art. I, Rhoda Madden, have finally purchased my first piece of art from an estate auction, no less. I know exactly where to hang it, right over the fireplace, saying aloud as I drove down the long driveway of the old neighboring home where the auction took place. I needed to hurry home before the stormy weather arrived. Dark and ominous were the skies as I scurried up my walkway, heaving the painting as quickly as I could. I was too excited to hang it, but wanted to avoid any rain falling on this wonderful investment. Making it inside, I gently placed the painting in the living room as I ran to the kitchen to grab my toolbox and ladder. An hour later, I sat at my desk peering at the painting, drinking hot Earl Grey tea, wondering about the history of my new art. The gentleman running the auction said the painting was extremely old, somewhere around 1839. The painting was a landscape with a great gray house made of stone, with plants growing upon it, like snakes slithering silently up the walls. There were cracks in the edifice suggesting decay and dilapidation. There was little color, mostly dark hues of ebony, gray, deep brown, and midnight blue, except for the redness of the moon. The trees were dying or dead, and the lake appeared deep with the blackness surrounding the front of the house. However, the trees showed the reflection in the sickly water. Even though the painting seemed so dark and dreary, I was drawn to the house. I did not know why, but I felt the house pulling me in. It seemed as if it was alive, but dying. This intrigued me. The storm outside began to pick up steam as my lights flickered periodically. For that reason, I placed my candelabra from my dining room table on my desk with my matchbook just in case. Finishing up my tea, I sat down at my desk again to search on my laptop for any information I could find about this painting. Before I hung it, I noticed at the top, close to the frame, something was written. One word. Usher. Since I found this one word, most likely a name, and I knew the year it was painted, that is what I searched online. It took me some digging, but a story finally appeared. Apparently, the house existed for many, many years, held by the same family, the Ushers. By the time of the painting, the house had fallen due to a terrible storm. However, the house was in utter disrepair due to the family not having the means for the upkeep. When the house fell, a brother and sister apparently died in the collapse. They were the last of the family Usher. I was so drawn in, I knew I had to keep digging, but it grew darker outside with harder rain, and the lights finally went out, along with the power. I lit the candelabra feeling better and realized my laptop had enough battery power to allow me to keep investigating. The only information I could find on the family was they had a long family tree dating back hundreds of years, and the last of the Ushers were eccentric, reclusive souls who died too young. This seemed so tragic. I was startled by a crashing sound outside. It was a grand sound of thunder, which made me shudder. As I looked out my large picture windows, I could barely see through the downpour, except when the bright glow of the lightning occurred. I decided I'd better move to the storm cellar below my house in the basement area. I had a small desk in there where I could keep researching. I quickly grabbed my computer in one hand and my candelabra in the other, and slowly stepping my feet down the spiral stone stairs to the room beneath my house. I was having trouble finding a great deal more information about the house or the Ushers, but I kept searching. When I hit a roadblock, I decided to check the weather and found my area was under a severe tornado warning and a severe flood warning. I hated I was all alone down in my basement, but I told myself I'd just keep looking for information. It would take my mind off the situation outside. As I found a little bit more about the house and the painting, I suddenly remembered a few people who were whispering in front of me at the auction about the house. From this little memory, along with the article I pulled up,
I found out the House of Usher existed in my town, and the auction where I bought the painting was owned by a family who went all the way back to the time of the Ushers. Just then, I clicked on another article containing some pictures of letters from a man who stayed with the last two Ushers. From what I could tell, it seemed the male usher buried his sister alive before the house fell. "Oh my, no!" I exclaimed aloud. "How dreadful!" Once I read these words, I knew I had to sell the painting. I could not keep it thinking of this awful story. I paused for a moment, trembling with discomfort and disdain. I decided to keep digging. I wanted to know exactly where the Ushers lived. After about an hour, nearing midnight, I found some information from city records showing plots of land. There it was, glowing on my computer screen. The plot of land I owned was where the House of Usher existed. Just as I was seeing this on my screen, an extremely loud boom echoed, and my house began to shake. "The tornado! It must be the tornado!" I screamed as I tried to pull up the weather. My computer went dead from draining the battery. The noises kept getting louder and louder as the house seemed to be moving and crashing above my head. I yelled out with uncontrollable fright and fear. In my mind, things started coming back to me. When I bought the house, the inspector warned me of possible cracks and faults in the foundation. I had to have the house, so I ignored him. When I was giving my check to the auctioneer, he could not believe a young lady like myself would want so solemn a painting. I told him, "I am so drawn to it. Even with the darkness, it is pure beauty." He replied, "I understand. Beauty can be found in so many misunderstood things." I responded, "Thank you, Mr. Poe. I can't wait to clean it up." Everything was making sense now as I held on for dear life. Now, this tiny safe room seemed to be coming my tomb as I was being buried alive by the bricks and materials of the house falling upon me. As I lay there helpless, scared, and petrified, I felt the floor heavily creak and give way as I fell to an unknown abyss, as my mind could not detour from the rumination of the painting of the House of Usher.
Thank you so much for joining us in this Everything Edgar episode.
You've been watching Bad JuJu and J-Bone
As we present Edgar Allan Poe. Many people love him. You only caught just a few. But you can find out more about these incredible people and what they create by checking out their websites and have a blast with all this great creative energy roaming through the universe. If you have a short horror film, horror song, or horror story that you would like to share with us,
send it to us. Information on that will be posted on the screen somewhere here, or even here.
or maybe right there.
Magical world of editing.
Not only can you find us on YouTube, but you can now find us on Open Signal out of Portland, Oregon. Like, subscribe, send us your questions,
comments.
We'll see you soon. Dreadful dreams.